Hello, I'm Marc, host of the Channel Chat podcast show, and this is a special series during this COVID crisis where we'll be sharing the learnings, best practices, and failures and successes of all the channel leaders throughout the tech industry. So sit back, listen, and enjoy. Hello, I'm Marc, host of the Channel Chat podcast show, and today in the virtual studio, I have the pleasure of two Citrix boys, Lee Hughes, COO of EMEA, and Darren Finney, VP of Partners for EMEA. Actually got your title that right there, Darren, didn't I?
Bye.
First thing is done. So guys, look, really wanted to get straight into it. And if I come to sort of Lee first, Lee, obviously this COVID crisis has affected everyone. It's been really challenging for a lot of companies out there. What has Citrix done to sort of support their staff and the well-being of their staff during the last sort of 3 months?
Yeah. So thanks, Marc. Thanks for having us on. So I think when you kind of step back and just think about that for a minute, this whole phenomenon that we've experienced around COVID and this kind of working from home sort of culture that's hit. I think what you've got to remember with Citrix is, like, for the last 30 years, we've been kind of preaching that this, work is not a place. It's kind of what you do. And therefore, the products, services, enablement, training are just around that whole mentality is what forms our company. So, I think there's, if you look at our organizations, just around 10,000 people, sort of like 25% of that at any given time is in the office. The rest is kind of remote, i.e. we're living proof of, this remote work thing is definitely possible. I think if we then look at kind of through COVID, we probably had the busiest time in our company's history, right? Certainly at the start of the year. Yeah. And, the teams transition from that, rotating mobile through the office through to totally, at home, really without missing a heartbeat. And for me, that comes down to a few things. Yes, it comes down to the tooling, right? We've got the tools. We know that, everyone, certainly enterprises have enjoyed the technology for a while. But then, it's more than that, really. It's the framework that we wrap around, I guess, the teams, and then the trust that we're putting in place such that the employees have got the ability to go and do that work. So for me, it was much more, COVID was never really about that technology aspect for us. So it was really about getting that people aspect right. Making sure that the employees, first of all, were safe, that the family life was functioning. And then both mentally and physically fit, kind of given the lockdown conditions and pressures that were ever present, be that kind of homeschooling, daycare, 2 people working in a very small environment, maybe with kids and without a garden that, some of us enjoy. So it's really about trying to see how we could sort of bring that kind of aspects together and give people just an environment that they could sort of thrive. So it's really overall, it's about communication, right? So that was absolutely critical for us, that really providing the management team and the staff the framework in which to operate, the tool sets which they've always kind of had, and then just really letting them loose with that, really, and kind of ensuring that they got the space to succeed. And I guess overall being re-emphasizing that it's all right to take a break. It's all right to build in these other aspects to ensure family life could sort of continue. And we did some other formal stuff around unconditional $1,000 bonus to every employee to try and make their kind of working environment a bit more pleasant. I spent mine on a garden table, clearly. And then it's about kind of the informal short videos from leadership talking about their own personal stories, kind of focusing on whether, be it a mental support or mental health, emotional support or financial support. And obviously the financial one came in the way of that bonus that I just spoke about. But so that's it, really. It's just that package, really, of providing the management team that framework and kind of just letting them and trusting them go do what they needed to do.
Yeah, because you would have had, your products and services are geared up for remote working. You're preaching it to your customers all the time, and Darren preaching it to partners. So from a technology point of view, seamless. Have you seen anything from sort of like, well-being issues, or people? I've seen loads of customers clients still do virtual pubs, virtual get-togethers, virtual quizzes, all that sort of stuff. Now, because you were remote working anyway, were you sort of doing that sort of team bonding stuff before, or was that something you started new? Because I'm seeing it with Darren yesterday. I was seeing it where people started doing it in March and April, and that has just dropped off completely. No one's even interested in doing these sort of things now, and almost like thinking, do you know what? I actually just want to go out and get air. So are you having challenges around sort of well-being and sort of keeping that morale going?
I think it's just being ever present and being kind of in touch with the reality, really, Mark. So yes, we had all those, I'm not going to call it forced fun, but we had those, those fun things going on. In some instances, it might be. So all of the quizzes were taking place. So we were doing things like the virtual yoga and all of that kind of stuff. That's definitely been going on. It's still going on. Was it happening before? No. We still had, like I say, 25% of the community sort of rotating through the offices. But I think I spotted on one of the feeds from the UK team today, and they're still persevering with they're changing the aspect of it somewhat, looking at things about how they can sort of up their kind of charitable work as a team. Donating what they would have been spending getting into the office into good causes. And then Citrix is again just one of the formal things that I sort of skipped over earlier on. We've kind of increased the ratio that we kind of employer match, should I say, from the charity side, just to again give another hook for people to try and take some bring some bigger context to what's going on.
Yeah. Darren, if I speak to you, what have you seen in general from the sort of partner community during this sort of last sort of 3 months? And that could be from demand or challenges, also from their own well-being, because some of these partners, even though they might have been not as agile as you are, some of them I've actually heard stories of actually trying to actually deploy their own staff around agile IT, etc. So what's been the consensus from the partners?
Yeah, and thanks, Mark, for asking. I guess just before we get there, can I just address the elephant in the room? Lee and I are not wearing team t-shirts, so for everyone that's doing this, I'm sorry we just didn't coordinate.
I wondered why you both come in white, though. I don't know why you both come in white. It sounds like you've been going golfing this afternoon or something.
That's secret out. What else will we be doing at the end of the quarter? so I guess to address your point, Mark, firstly, I just want to extend a huge thank you to our partner community. I mean, if Lee touched on it, everyone's got their own personal story of how COVID has impacted them. And, I guess none of us can really relate to anybody else's, but at a time when everyone was being asked to work remotely from our partners, they were trying to make sure their family was safe and that they could address any education or support needs from their family. And then you bring us and our customers into that whole consideration as well around how do we make sure that we go and solve for standing up our customers so that they can continue to work effectively.
Yeah.
So, our partners have been superb as we've gone through that. What we have seen is that they've really been quick to respond to our customer needs. They've helped them, because recognize that for many of our customers, only a very small percentage ever really worked remotely. So suddenly now it was 100%. So they've had to help them with readiness. They've had to help them with enablement. For many of our partners, they've had to accelerate their ability to go and host for our customers as well. So we've seen a huge transition, I think, in terms of the partner skill set and I guess their ability to react to the market at a time when I think for many of us, we're all dealing with our own personal stories around how do I become efficient at home. So for me, it's demonstrated what a great loyal channel we have and the resilience of that channel, how supportive they've been to make sure we can get our customers there.
Yeah, and staying with you, what are you doing in order to enable their partners to be more successful? Are there any initiatives you're doing, or are there any things that you've been thinking about, thinking actually this would help the partner community?
There has been, and there's a number of things that we've already started. We kind of got ahead of it, we're a global organization, so we kind of saw some of the stuff that was happening. So it allowed us to respond with some specific programs, some specific enablement very, very early on, so that our partners could understand how they could provision for business continuance, what they needed to do. So there was a there's a great deal of enablement, I guess, and knowledge sharing that we did very, very early on.
Yeah.
And then from a programmatic point of view, we've recognised that that long tail of, I guess, our SMB and mid-market customers, everyone naturally gravitates towards the big enterprise and corporate accounts. But for that long tail, what we've started to do as well is we develop programs very early on to support our partner community by saying, look, there's rich programs, rich incentives if you can go and invest in these areas, because this is where we really need to double down, because they typically don't have the resources or IT capabilities that you might find in many of those corporate or enterprise customers. So there's an awful lot we did in preparation for what was coming that's then kind of carried through, I think, in every one of our geos.
Okay, great. And you there, Lee, what are you seeing from a customer perspective, and how are sort of Citrix supporting their customers? Because there's going to be, there's obviously the NHS, heroes in the NHS, but my God, there's some serious heroes in IT, because if they hadn't had the support from clients like customers like yourself or companies like yourself, they'd have been lights out. They just wouldn't be there. So how are Citrix supporting their customers, and what are you seeing?
Yeah, sure. I think if I could just link it to kind of what Darren was alluding to there. So kind of back in early January, well, not even early January, actually mid-January, you could see that COVID wasn't going to be going away anytime soon, right? You could see it was going to be a big problem. I
knew it was a big problem, like March 26th, and they said, go home, and I didn't have a laptop. That's the time I knew. Don't tell me we knew in January it's going to be a problem. Like, I got March 26th. I thought, I haven't got a laptop here. What are we doing? So, no, we didn't know it was going to be a problem. But sorry.
That's fine. We could see, like, across Asia, it coming at us. So pretty, and it was in the mid-January timeframe that we kind of got these offers out into the market that were kind of low cost, burst capacity for both new and existing customers. Brilliant. Really to allow them to scale up at pace to deliver business continuity. And by the way, it's definitely evolved, right? So I would say then from kind of the February to mid-April timeframe, kind of our teams have been kind of working around the clock, trying to help customers get their employees back home as this thing's kind of rolled over towards us and then kind of gone back out through Eastern Europe and out to the Middle East, get their employees back home, be safe, secure, and ultimately back to being productive, right? So what does that kind of mean then? So it's mostly focused on helping those customers scale up the environments that we've renewed to them, or, there was a niche use case kind of in the corner of an organization, and then that just scaling that up just massively through to kind of just troubleshooting environments. Some of the largest banks in the UK, we spent a lot of time actually helping them troubleshoot those environments and debug as environments that may have been not had the care and attention that they probably need over the time, and then going from like running an old car almost, right, and just trying to hit it up to 100 mile an hour instantly. You're going to have challenges with it. So a lot of the work was around that, and then I think during kind of that phase and somewhat today, it's really about, kind of I alluded to it earlier on, about imparting that knowledge that we picked up over those kind of 30 years, enabling enterprises from an any perspective. And that's not, again, just not about the technology. It was about the people. It was about the process. And yes, ultimately, it was about the technology, given kind of who we are. And I think what we're seeing now, what we're continuing to work on. So if that was kind of the initial sort of scale up, build a capability, kind of instant reaction mode, kind of what we've been working on sort of through to almost today really is, I'm going to go, I think it'll carry on for a little bit longer, really, is really trying to take to market some complementary quick start packages and service offerings, be that professional services or cloud-based services that are available via the channel, and kind of what Darren's alluding to there, from kind of SMB to enterprise. I guess a couple of examples of that would be kind of in networking. So everyone rushed out to get their kind of workspace kind of up and running, and you got sent home, right? Can Marc now log in from home? All of that stuff, absolutely, that's great. That was kind of wave one, but very quickly customers started to realize, actually, unless I've got a highly performant network, this isn't working. Oh, and actually, it's not just a high performance network for yesterday. I've now got 3 kids at home that are on Zoom or on Teams calls. You know, I've got my youngest sort of finishing at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He's now on fortnight. So how do we package this stuff together and give you an environment that's going to be highly performant? So we're doing a lot of work around the network, be that kind of as a pay-as-you-go and packages that kind of bolt onto existing hardware, or even new products such as, like, I don't know, SD-WAN, that we're starting to see customers either typically kind of the C-suite -1 or -2 for the enterprises, and it could be even in the call center type workers, that they just need that quality of service out of the home, that standard broadband on its own within that world that I've kind of just described, it's not going to perform at the level that they're going to focus. So we've definitely seen a kind of the user experience becoming much more important as this thing kind of evolves and matures. And so I'm expecting more services to start to become available on top of the ones I've already just touched on there, kind of over the next few weeks, really, to kind of just build out, you know, what those customer environments look like, make them more resilient, as I say, with channel-friendly services and products. Sorry, Mark. Just one other thing. What I would also say, just talking about the customers and kind of what we've kind of seen, we're definitely on a cloud journey, right? Most customers are on a cloud journey. What I would say is those customers that pre-COVID had already taken the decision to go cloud, Citrix cloud, what we'd seen there is, you know, the ability to turn on tens of thousands, literally, as I'm thinking about an oil company that we deal with, they turned on something like 50,000 users over sort of a weekend. Our old world, that just wouldn't have been possible, right? So I think what we're then starting to see, like right now, is, okay, so we stood an environment up, we've got through that phase, we've made that a little bit more resilient, adding some networking in, but now the phase that we're definitely seeing with customers is, actually, Citrix, I need to have a longer term strategy conversation to how do we make this more resilient in terms of we can scale quickly for whatever, you know, hopefully not wave 2, but whatever comes down the path next. So that's kind of the evolution of what we've seen.
Yeah, because, you know, there were so many, you know, organizations I was speaking to saying, right, wave 1, let's get a laptop and get from home. Wave 2, oh my God, my Wi-Fi doesn't work and I haven't really signal, and, you know, it just doesn't work. And also as well, you know, we're talking about music technology, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, whatever platform it is, 8x8, whatever it is. Most people, I was going home and I couldn't log on. I just couldn't get onto these sort of things. And it was like, it's asking that person by the water cooler to help you. You couldn't do that. So were you seeing almost like, you know, around from your customers, not you as a firm, but your customers actually adopting these services, or actually, you know, being able to deploy them throughout these homes?
I think we saw some of that. I think that's probably, you know, quite often we're a 100% channel business, so that servicing from the channels homes, that wasn't kind of happening from our part. Clearly, getting the enterprise product ready and the back end infrastructure and tying that together. Yeah, we've definitely been involved in that, and we're still involved in it. I think it was yesterday I read something on the Financial Post that kind of 82% of workforces aren't expected to be back at scale into the office for the next 12 to 18 months, right? That's only one person's opinion. So, you know, hopefully it isn't that long, but, you know, in the meantime, we've got to keep the economy going. And, you know, I think what we're seeing is we kind of, as you kind of just pointed out, right, so we've gone from that crisis, we're kind of coming out of this extended working from home, but where we see it now is it's much more about this kind of resilience phase. I know next normal's been talked about for ages, and it's probably one of those phrases that kind of just gets thrown around a bit too much. I'm not sure we're actually quite there yet, right? Because I think it's that balance between that coming out of that crisis phase, that extended working from home, kids starting to get back to school, but that doesn't mean it's new normal. We're still going through this resilience phase that then starts to throw up other opportunities that you've spoken around about. Kind of how do we kind of service this environment now? You know, in an office, there's a nice box, everything was in a box and it's quite nice. It brings out a different challenge, a different opportunity. And, you know, I'd be interested to see kind of, you know, how the channel will then go out and adopt that kind of as they scale out almost of an SMB play for them.
This for both, and it's almost a technology one, because, you know, your products and services, you know, perfectly set for this crisis and to keep the lights on and keep businesses going. experience of dealing with this anyway, because I've seen that once customers the technology, there's almost a bit of a trust issue with the employee. So, you know, I'm saying today, someone's like, you know, it's 31 degrees out there. I'm going to be sitting in their garden and having a barbecue, and you know, Lee, you've come on there in the back garden, which is great to almost promote that. I'm almost thinking that, you know, and it's
Mark, it was a red rag to the bull. You posted the flyer on this morning, and I thought I've just got to do it. It's 31 degrees, and I want to get back inside for the air conditioning. If I'm being very honest.
Question: if I come to you with it, Darren, you know, you've been able to sort of, you know, I suppose manage people, work remotely, etc. And before, working remotely or having that flexible working was normally a privilege. It was almost like, once you're a trusted employee, we will let you have that sort of autonomy. But now customers and end users have been forced to, you know, if someone joins next week, they have to work from home and they're deployed. They've been forced to give out that trust. How do you think people they are able to sort of like manage that expectation where they think, do you know what? They've got the Citrix tools, they've got all the platform, they've got all the technology to be perfect. Yet, if there's distractions coming at them, are this newbie going to be actually going down the pub at 3 o'clock and we don't know what he's going to be doing anyway? How do you think people can manage that?
Yeah, and I guess that's a difficult one. I guess for us, we got a number of considerations. If I look at my team, you know, I mean, we have more collaboration now. Everyone being at home, you alluded to it earlier on. With more collaboration now than ever before. So I think for my team, you know, in all candor, sometimes I wish they would go down the pub because email traffic, I guess, activity is so high at the moment. So I think from that perspective, you know, we really do need to entrust our people. And that, you know, Lee touched on that earlier on. That is exactly what we've started to do now, is that we empower our people. You know, they are adults. They're all responsible for their own business, their own focus area, be that their partner segment or their customer segment. And I think to some extent, you know, there needs to be an element of trust. I know old school was very much that, well, no, if they're not sat at their desk, they're not working. I think in my history, I can think of half a dozen bosses that had that attitude. Yeah. Luckily, yeah, but luckily at Citrix, I guess, as Lee touched on, it's in our DNA. We're working remotely now for so many years. I guess that trust has always been there. It's a given. You know, we can trust our people to go and do that. That kind of would be, in my view.
I mean, Lee, I can see a change program, and it is, you know, let's view it as a change program, right? There's definitely change here. It comes down to three things: people, process, and technology. Whatever you want to do in life, it's one and a blend of all of those three things, right? So the technology given, we don't need to talk about that. The process part for me is probably where most companies need to be looking at, right? So how are they going to modify their management system, operating model such to reflect that actually I feel good that I've got the right measures, both leading and lagging indicators kind of in place, that I'm able to then go and release my fear about that trust issue, right? So if you, which is the people aspect. So you've got the people, process, technology. For me, this one's probably most about enabling the process to allow the trust of the people.
Perfect. Lee, I'll stay with you there. In general, and you don't have to give me stats or numbers or anything, but in general, how are sort of Citrix performing in the market?
I kind of already alluded to. So Q1 was our biggest. It was our busiest quarter, right? In EMEA ever. So, you know, so that's very well. There's clearly there's a demand there, as I've kind of called out. I think. You know, as we kind of go forward, I think what is definitely we're seeing more and more of, and I kind of alluded to it already, right, which is this heading towards that kind of visionary piece. So if you think about that journey, kind of immediate reaction, tactical kind of extended working from home, bolstering resilience phase, using the phrase again, next normal, which is almost the vision piece for me. What I'm starting to see now is just what I said earlier, really. It's just more and more and more work on that visionary piece about how do we embrace this now kind of for the long term. So I guess let's try and give that some kind of context then. So much more about that employee experience. You know, we're having conversations with kind of HRDs or HR functions much more than we ever have before, as we kind of sort of move forward to how do we get that employee experience, given that it's still a precious commodity, in terms of our people. That's that's definitely coming forever more important. I think as people continue to try to make the working experience more resilient, not just from a yes it works perspective, but how do I make this secure?
Yeah.
How do I make this really secure such that we're not bleeding data, we're not bleeding, the cyber attacks they've not disappeared because COVID's hit, right? So how do we make this environment much more secure? How do I let my data center kind of go out right out to the edge? So that whole network conversation is just really resonating. And so from a future opportunity, how we're performing, that's kind of the products that we're seeing that pull. And then I think we've got this overarching thing that remains and is ever present called cloud, right? Which I kind of alluded to the pace in which people are able to dial that up. If I was, I guess, a channel partner, and clearly I'm going to say this about going to sell Citrix technologies, you've got to be thinking about, okay, Citrix, you've got, you're in 90% of the enterprises globally. Customers want to scale that. How do I go out and take this customer kind of on a journey, go and target that install base and get it shifted to cloud would be one of the things I'd be calling out. And then, again, talking about the vision piece, that kind of ties back to, again, for 30 years, we've been known as like the virtualization player in the market.
Yeah.
Right now, I think the opportunity is about helping our customers develop a vision, which is more about kind of this digital workspace that we're kind of talking about, that's secure, that's stable, that's performant, that VDI is part of, but you've got this opportunity to include SaaS, born in the cloud applications, where customers are considering much more of this zero trust kind of strategy. So what does all of that mean? We're definitely seeing more and more and more conversations, not just in that traditional workspace kind of engagement with IT. It's going out to HR, it's going out to the security teams, it's going out to the networking teams. And that's kind of what's going on. For me, that's where the opportunity is. So, I would be saying, take the blinkers off, kind of what have known Citrix for, which is that VDI piece, and really try and embrace what customers are wanting, which is a more encompassing kind of this digital workspace solution.
Darren, if I come to you, obviously the partner community, what I've noticed in the partner community much more during COVID is rapid communication, running webinars and trying to give education out to end users, which I think is great. Is really, really good. I'm looking at it as almost like why they didn't do that before. Why weren't they that? And I'm not knocking at partners, I'm not saying that, but why weren't they that great at educating end users on Citrix technology or whatever it was? Because I'm looking at it, there's a massive opportunity out there for partners now in the partner community from the ecosystem doing. I've seen it well adopted pre-COVID. Now I'm seeing webinars and education. So where do you see the big opportunity now for partners over the next sort of 3 to 6 months, where this is going to continue and your products and services are going to be almost empty?
Yeah, so I think the opportunity for our partners, Mark, I really see is, I guess, well, firstly, it's the adjustment. There's probably 3 things that I think of when I think about the next 6 months ahead. The first one is really everybody's safety, because again, we're already hearing about a second bounce and, things like that. So safety needs to be the first consideration. So, I know it's a cliche. We keep saying the new way of working. Many of the partner execs I spoke to about their own people's safety, they're trying to get their own people back to the office in some phase. They don't want vendor account managers then coming and plonking themselves in their office. So the first thing I think we need to think of, that I'm thinking of, is how do we work with our partners to make sure that we continue to support them, they continue to be aware and enabled on everything that we do. In a time normally we'd be doing that face to face. The second part of that as well is that typically when our partners go and see customers, quite often it's a 4 or sometimes 6-legged meeting, where they're joined by the account manager and an SE. So again, our customers won't want that as well. So we need to respect that. So that's probably the first thing I think about. there's a lot more needed in terms of how we drive enablement and readiness with our partner community, and they in turn to the customer to make sure that we can protect that number one priority, which is keeping everybody safe. I think the second, because that's only your first one. The second, how long have we got? The second one was, and Lee nailed it, is, as I talk to those partners as well, they're talking more about the opportunity, and Lee touched on this in terms of, what's important to the customer. How do I improve my connectivity? So again, there's a big play of a conversation we can have there. How do I help my my customers' employee experience and employee productivity? Again, workspace front and center plays to that as well. So there's a big play in that area. And then finally, what we started to see in the shift is, how do I move my customer more to cloud to try and de-risk their business so they can scale up or scale down if needed? So for us, I think the second priority as well is really around that area and what we're doing. And then the third one that's really top of mind as well and plays out in every country at the moment that I talk to is, this is having an impact on economies. We are seeing recessions looming. So how do we support our customer and our partner with their liquidity as well? And, within my team, one of the things that we've been doing is we've been putting together a bi-weekly report looking at the commercial impact this is having across all the countries. So this is taking data from analysis, from our distributors, from other vendors, so we can really try and build out a picture of what is the impact, and try, like anybody else, to put as much intelligence as possible behind what our partners and customers need. So, as we come into Q3, our partners, bit of a spoiler alert here, our partners will start to hear more about what we're doing to drive more extended terms with our distribution that we can then pass down through our partner, through to our customer, to support some of those liquidity challenges. So that's probably the three things for me: keeping people safe, expanding the opportunity and driving more productivity, and then supporting our partners with liquidity.
You said that on the information piece, you're getting that data. Is that weekly you're getting that data out to your partners?
No, I'm doing it. I'm not sharing it with the partners. It's something I'm doing internally bi-weekly. So it's a good, because I guess in fairness, Mark, I hear this. I get emails, I get calls almost every day from a partner saying, "Hey, this is our situation. This is where we're at." And I have a responsibility to do something with that. I kind of go, I hear you. Every vendor, every market has the same. So what I do is I take that, we consolidate that, we then get third-party feedback together with other vendor feedback, and we bring all that together in a report that I've been sharing with our LT, so our leadership team, both globally and at an EMEA level. So we kind of can test the temperature on a bi-weekly basis of exactly what's going on. And it's because of that, it's given us obviously the foresight to say, right, these are programs we've already stood up to address some of that long tail that I spoke about. And these are the other things that we're doing now to really try and extend terms to help out our customers and our partners through this difficult time.
Two last questions to you guys before I let you go. The first one is an individual one for both of you. Darren, you'd have been, going to meetings and flying around, etc. I'm sure, Lee, you were going out to meetings all the time. Do you think you've become more effective, even though you had the technology and you agile working, etc.? Do you think you've been more effective now in terms of your customer meetings than you were before when you were going out face to face with them?
I wouldn't say so personally. I got great value in me. You get great value from meeting partners and being face to face with them and building that relationship. I guess what I have got more efficient at is I got more efficient at my email and reacting to tasks. I think for those customer meetings, they're happening virtually. It's still good to get that engagement. But the other thing as well, perversely, Mark, is as much as I moaned about all the travel, I typically would be in one or two countries a week is what I try to do. Usually one, sometimes two. What I miss is that thinking time, that downtime that I had that was whilst traveling to the airport or sat waiting for the flight or on the flight, where I was away from all connectivity and could actually think about what it was I needed to do. Some of that's been lost because I'm trying to get around as many partners and as many of our own people as I possibly can. So the diary is just back to back. So I guess everyone's kind of getting that fatigue, I feel. So it is trying to make sure now, as we move into the new norm, I'm taking that time, not to sit in the garden, but to make sure I take that time to really think that I guess in the past I just taken for granted.
To be honest with you, Dan, with the echo that you've got, I think you probably would be more effective in person, because these video things aren't going to be great. But
we need to get an SD-WAN box to your house instantly, Darren. I think is the call here, right?
Was that not my first question?
What about you, Lee? What about you, Lee? Is it more effective for you?
So I think you asked. Sorry, it just broke up. I think you said effective, right?
Yeah.
Efficient, definitely.
Yeah.
Right. So, I think my wife thought that I'd moved into Heathrow before. Right. So, certainly the cutting back on that travel time, that almost that dead time, oblique thinking time. Right. So on one side, that losing that has definitely made me more efficient. I think on the flip to that, and to Darren's point, those moments of kind of be it kind of sat in an airport lounge, or where your diary, you just can't be everywhere all at the same time. That efficiency now means I can speak to kind of 3 continents in a day, be it through video or be it just audio. That management of it's just become miles more efficient, miles more. I think this thing comes back to something I was talking about earlier around the whole change piece and kind of people, process, technology. I think we've got to be just really mindful of creating that gap in, our calendars, in our diaries, such that we do get that downtime. Because I think without it, I think the effective piece becomes questionable.
Yeah.
And what I actually found is that I think there was an over rotation on video. Once we got that past that kind of fun bit of seeing Darren and Lee in the same white shirts, or Marc in his pajamas, possibly. I don't know.
I knew that. I knew that was coming.
Once you got past that, actually there is a comes with it. There is, because you're just looking at it and trying to experience it in a different way. So I think that's more and more about just having that process piece, the people piece, just really mindful of kind of taking that break. So I guess the effective piece certainly in my role, will come in when we see the results. The results definitely spoke for themselves in Q1. But I guess personally, I enjoyed the ability to be able to get to just a higher volume of people within a given day. So from that part of it, I am actually enjoying kind of that aspect. And you know what? As long as I'm mindful, I'm now seeing my kids I probably didn't see for a couple of years with the travel. So, how do you make that work? And there is kind of a benefit. So kind of that overall, if you're kind of happy at home, you're going to be happy at work. That's definitely, I'd definitely subscribe to that. So, it's about individuals finding their own way, isn't it, to make it work.
Great. And my last question, guys, and I'll come to you, Darren, with it first. What, if anything, have you learned through COVID that you'll continue doing now in your job? And that could be, like almost what Lee's adapted now, actually not doing less meetings or less travel or whatever it is. Is there anything you've learned in the last 3 months you think, actually, I will continue this, whatever happens post-COVID?
That's a good question. I think for me, it's going to be that proactiveness, reaching out more. I kind of, and again, sharing. I kind of assume I'm never more than a 2-3 week away from being in one of the areas, meeting one of the countries, and I kind of relied on that to build that ongoing engagement, that ongoing rapport. What this has taught me is 3 or 4 weeks is a long time in our industry. So don't take it for granted. I'm in Germany in 4 weeks' time. Therefore, I can kind of not reach out to the team for a couple of weeks before I get there. I think it's really important that I keep that regular cadence. And when I say that regular cadence, I mean beyond those weekly one-to-ones that I have with my leadership team. That's kind of, I guess, what my dependency has been in the past. As I travel, maybe in the back of the cab, I'm having to catch up with them. And to me, that's what this has taught me, is it's not enough. So I need to be more focused at a granular level, with each of those areas and with each of the countries. Yeah. No, you sounded like my boss.
Well, and I'll leave you to, Lee, you've been lucky. You've had a few minutes to think about it, but I'm going to leave you to finish with it. What the sort of thing that you've done in the last sort of 3 months you'll think, actually, I will continue that post-COVID?
Yeah, whether it's what I've done or certainly what I've learned and therefore what I'm going to, carry on to do. I think for me, it's just really bringing home the people aspects, right? The human aspects of this. There was a point in late March that sort of brought it home, and kind of that. And what the point here is kind of those external influences and how that kind of affects people, and their abilities, to go do what they need to do whilst they're at work. And what brought it home? I was talking to a guy actually who's based out of the Milan office, so they got hit a little bit earlier than us. He'd got a kind of two kids under 2. He and his partner are obviously in full-time work, and just that adaptation and just understanding and trying to think what that looks like, because you've got these 2 toddlers in effect in a flat in the middle of Milan without a garden, and this thing's not going away anytime soon. So therefore, how do you create that environment for that guy in this case to go and be successful with this stuff around the outside? So that's kind of, I guess, where I started, if you like, was talking about kind of a trust aspect. So we had tools. Yeah, we've had those tools for ages. Kind of, we've got a framework in place, and how you adapt that framework to the current situation and to the individual, I think it's critical. And then from that can flow trust. So that's what I would say that I've kind of been reinforced through this process, and something that I'm absolutely going to be much more mindful of kind of moving forward.
Gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Until next time, I'll speak to you soon. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us and listening to another episode of our Channel Chat podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard and are listening on iTunes, please could you give us a review and subscribe in order to get the newest episodes as soon as they're released. Otherwise, as always, we release an episode every Thursday at midday, so hopefully you can join us then.